The first election I voted in as an 18-year-old was this year, the May local elections. Now, many were, should we say, not surprised by the results, because it was quite predictable. But I suppose you could say it solidified a long-standing trend. Labour in second, Tories in fourth. How did we get here? The two-party system, the duopoly, it's over. How do we get it? Isn't it a rule? First past the post produces two-party systems. What's with the rise of Reform, the Greens, more recently Restore, and the resurgence of the Liberal Democrats, combined with the diminishing popularity of the Conservatives and Labour? Well, you are correct. That is a general rule. It's called Duverger's law, and it was formulated by Maurice Duverger in the 1950s. What it basically says is that in a winner-takes-all system, where only one person can vote, and whoever wins elections is decided by whoever has more votes than the second place candidate, this system will inevitably produce two dominant parties. And I'll give an example of how it works. Imagine you support the yellow party, so you vote for them. In the end, the red party wins, and the blue party gets into second place. However, you prefer the blue party to the red party. In fact, if all of the yellow party voters decided, let's rally around the blue candidate and vote for the blue party would beat the red party. You know, as do all of the other yellow party supporters, that though you all prefer the yellow party, you know the yellow party doesn't have enough votes to ever actually win. So you strategically shift your vote. You vote for the blue party wins. This is basically Duverger's law. This is how Labour and the Conservatives have safeguarded against third parties. But now Reform are topping the polls. The Greens are challenging Labour on the left. Where did this come from? Doesn't this violate Duverger's law? It does. But I believe we can trace this interesting phenomenon of the modern Britain violating Duverger's law back to, drumroll please, the Brexit vote. That's right, guys. Everything in British politics nowadays can trace back to the Brexit vote. The vote was held on June 16th. It simply asked, should the UK remain in or leave the European Union? It was basically the culmination, the magnum opus of Eurosceptic parties across Britain, parties like UKIP, Eurosceptic politicians as well, the most famous being Nigel Farage, who now obviously leads Reform. In 2013, the referendum was established with David Cameron saying if the Tories won a majority in the next election, which would be 2015, that he would call a referendum on British membership to the European Union. However, the results of the referendum did not exactly go his way. The result of the referendum was a victory for Leave, which surprised Cameron, who was a Remainer, and also surprised the pollsters, who all had Remain in a pretty comfortable, though precarious lead, I believe. And please don't quote me on this. I mean, I was 8 years old when the Brexit referendum happened. It's not like I'm speaking from first-hand experience here, but I believe it was like most pollsters had them at 52%, and they had Leave at 48%. So it wasn't like the pollsters were predicting Remain to massively blow them out, but they were predicting a Remain victory, which did not happen. Cameron, obviously being a Remainer, he decided to resign the prime ministership after this result, and it only took a few years for the Conservative Party to go from being led by a Remainer to being led by Boris Johnson, Mr. Brexiteer. Maybe not Mr. Brexiteer, maybe that's Nigel Farage, but he was certainly a Brexiteer, and he took control of the party in 2019, I believe, after Theresa May resigned. So how do you get this? Well, the Conservative Party, was deeply divided on Brexit. It's how you would have Remainers and Leavers or Brexiteers in the same party. And this wasn't exclusive to the Conservative Party. The Labour Party itself was also kind of divided. The leader of the time, Jeremy Corbyn, was himself in a bit of a tricky position. Um, he officially supported Remain in the referendum, but he was kind of criticised for being lukewarm on it. He sort of viewed the EU as part of a broader anti-Western ideology he has. So like NATO and other stuff. He had comments in the past about the EU that weren't exactly super supportive, but he towed the party line, and the Labour Party line for the referendum was to Remain. Though other Remainers in Labour criticised him because they viewed him as being quite lukewarm on the issue and not campaigning ferociously enough for it. Eventually, he would say that he supports a second referendum on the issue. So do with that what you will. I don't know what that would suggest, but he did come around to saying we should have a second referendum on it. Um, so ignoring my ramblings for a bit, we can see the two parties were very divided on this issue. It was like a cleaving between them. So I think we should move on now to what exactly are political parties within a two-party system. In a two-party system, as the name suggests, you can imagine, there are only two major parties. For some examples of some two-party systems in the United States, you've got the Republicans and the Democrats, and no one else has much of a chance. It's quite actually probably quite extreme as a two-party system because in parliamentary systems we usually tend to be more multi-party. Even though if you're first past the post parliamentary system, you're going to be a two-party system. For example, in the UK we have like oh, there's a dog. Most days. It's a shame, when you're in like the daytime of Minecraft, you can't tame a dog because poor thing. Yeah, because those skeletons. We'll have to go skeleton hunting. Sorry, I keep rambling. I shouldn't be playing Minecraft while I'm talking. Where was I? The United States. Yeah, presidential systems. Are surprisingly they can be surprisingly steadfast. The United States in particular, because like its third largest party is like what the Libertarian Party. Um, and that is like you'd expect it to get maybe like one or two electoral votes at least, and then they'll have like maybe a handful of seats in the House of Representatives, and then maybe have like a senator every now and again. No, there's nothing from its third largest party. So it really is like if you're not Republican or Democrat, you are essentially donezo. You need to pick a side there. In the UK, we're not as extreme as that. We have like the Liberal Democrats before their merger with the SPD in I think the 1980s maybe or the 1990s if not. It was just the Liberals. Um, we have the Greens. We have more recently regionalist parties like the SNP and Plaid Cymru. So, so we're not as extreme, but we're still a two-party system. Other two-party systems include Canada, the Conservatives, and the Liberals. Sort of, their Liberals never got usurped by like a Workers' Party, a Labour Party, like our Liberals did. It's interesting. I'm gonna have to make a video on that. I don't know. I don't know a lot about Canadian politics. Stop rambling. Um, stop rambling me. India. Oh, I'll be honest. I don't know too much. God, I'm hungry now. I should get food. It's too late to go nighttime now. I'll have to camp out. It might be a good idea if I camp out here because I won't be able to distract myself with what's going on in the game. Um, sorry, India. I don't know about Indian politics, but they have a two-party system because they are first past the post, being a British colony. Got the INC and the BJP. In the UK, for much of our history, it was the Conservatives and Liberals, as I said. Canada kind of kept that, but after World War One the Liberals, I'll say it, the Liberals were replaced by Labour. And so for much of our modern history, it's been the Conservatives and Labour. However, when you have just two parties, a country doesn't just have two ideologies. It has as much diversity in ideology as a multi-party democracy. among both the voters and among the politicians. It's not like a two-party nation suddenly only has two ideologies, either left wing or right wing. As much as some of the culture wars or partisan YouTubers may want you to believe, we actually have a lot of ideologies, a lot of different syncretic views, and among both voters and politicians. So how can we get all of these numerous varied ideologies in a country into just two parties? How do they fit into just two parties? Well, the two parties are what is called a big tent. What this basically means is they can hold multiple ideologies within a single party. In multi-party democracies, all of the ideologies go off and they make their own party, which is just they tend to be more pure ideologically. In two party systems, the parties tend to be a lot more divided ideologically, a lot more varied. It's how you can have a Remainer like Cameron, who is sort of a one nation Tory centrist Remainer who can make a coalition with the Lib Dems, and then you go like what was it? 3 years later, from 2016 to 2019, and then you got Boris Johnson, who's like a proper Brexit supporting geezer. And same goes for Labour. Same goes for Labour. How you can have a new Labour centrist moderate like Tony Blair, a technocrat like him, with a hard left socialist like Jeremy Corbyn. How are they in the same party? Those are like Tony Blair and Jeremy Corbyn. They have such different ideologies. It's the Big Tent. This is the magic of a big tent. You can have all of these different ideologies. If they're in a multi-party system, Jeremy Corbyn and Tony Blair, they'd probably be in different parties. You know, if they were in Germany, um, Tony Blair would probably be part of the SPD. Corbyn probably Die Linke. Uh, but in the UK, they were both part of the same party. I think Corbyn's been kicked out now, but at the time, for a long time, they were both part of the same party. What Brexit did was shatter this. Brexit shattered the big tents. The big tents are gone. Labour used to be able to keep these voters of varying ideologies together. It had the middle class progressives, which are kind of brought in under New Labour with Tony Blair, who are like progressive socially. You know, they support like LGBT rights, feminism, multiculturalism, all this kind of thing. But they still want like sensible economics, free market economics. And you also have like socially conservative workers in like a lot of like the sort of deindustrialized north who are like, yes, they want public ownership and they want a good big industrial economy, but they're also kind of socially conservative. They might not be as big fans of multiculturalism as these urban progressives. Labour was able to keep these two sort of voters and many other voters. Those aren't the only two Labour voters, but many other voters in the Big Ten. Brexit kind of shattered that. You had to take a stand in Brexit. Are you a Remainer? Are you a Leaver? It was such a big thing in British politics. I mean, we're still talking about 10 years later, we're still talking about it. It was a big, major thing in British politics. You kind of had to take a stance. You couldn't just be like ambivalent to keep the big tent together. I mean, it was the same for conservatives. I mean, conservatives have like sort of free market, capitalist businessmen in it, but they also have sort of nationalist sovereignty focused people who are maybe more skeptical of immigration. Um, so the Conservatives have this too. Both parties have a big tent, and Brexit really made them struggle to keep together their big tent. Both parties couldn't avoid Brexit. It dominated the news cycle. Everyone was expected and pushed to take a firm position on the issue. We can see the consequences of this divide in the elections that followed. In the elections since Brexit, we've not really seen anything normal. In 2017, an election was called by Theresa May, despite already inheriting a majority, to give her a larger one, to avoid difficulties with getting votes on Brexit, as a small majority has less wiggle room, you know, if party discipline fails. Despite polling looking pretty good, actually, with it. I mean, I think electoral calculus has them at 358 seats. And Britain elects Nowcast having them on 354, both of that on polling day. The Gambit failed. The Conservatives became a minority government, producing a pretty rare hung parliament. By British standards, a hung parliament, pretty rare. This reflected a continuation of the failure of pollsters to accurately predict the mood of the British people. As I said, they'd also failed to predict the Brexit vote correctly. they had Remain to win at 52%. I believe, however, the biggest effect of Brexit was seen in the 2019 election. The 2019 election, which is infamous for the shattering of the Red Wall, a massive moment in British politics. Boris Johnson's pro-Brexit campaign managed to win over the pro-Brexit socially conservative working class, we were talking about that, of Labour's industrial north. They lost them. They lost much of them to the Conservatives, to the Conservatives over Brexit. This, in my opinion, was really the point where it proved Brexit was no ordinary issue. Brexit could actually threaten the big tents now. People who, these people who were like voting Labour, these constituencies who have voted Labour for so long are turning blue because the Conservatives are the pro-Brexit party and Labour were supportive of remaining. And so they switched. After it, Corbyn resigned, ending Labour's experiment with a hard left, and Boris Johnson would lead Britain, with Britain being led for the first time since joining the EU by a Brexiteer, a proper Brexiteer who wanted to leave. Cameron was a Remainer, and so that's why he resigned. Theresa May herself campaigned for Remain during the referendum, so Boris Johnson was actually the first Brexiteer to lead the UK. Then we get to the most recent election, only 2 years ago, the 2024 election. Reform UK made massive gains. They got 14.3% of the vote. 14.3%. That's very low. I mean, they were only founded in 2018. That was as a Brexit party. I don't know exactly when they were refounded as Reform, but it wasn't that long ago. I mean, to get 14.3%, and not only that, now they're topping the polls. They are declining a bit though. I think they're now down to only around a quarter in the polls, 25%. I think they peaked around the low 30s. So they've declined, but they are still topping most polls. The Greens, as well have made pretty big gains after we've got Keir Starmer in. Actually, on the day I'm recording this, and probably on the day I'm uploading it. I tend to upload videos the day of recording. But the day I'm recording this, I've actually just come upstairs to record this from me watching Burnham give his opening speech as Prime Minister. So now it's Burnham. But the Greens made a lot of gains because Starmer is seen as tacking a bit to the centre, not being left wing enough, especially after Corbyn, who is very hard left. Starmer sort of was like an equal and opposite. He went let me see, is it daytime? Oh, look, it is. I can go out now. Maybe find some skeletons to tame that dog. Actually, I need to find food. No, yeah, Starmer was seen as a bit too centre, attacking too much to the centre, too right wing for them, and so they switched to the Greens. So the Greens are also becoming pretty big, as probably as big as I believe they've ever been. I mean, they're like a what? I think they're at 12% now in a Nowcast model I saw. I usually check it quite frequently. They're around 12%, and they're polling around like 10 to 15% consistently. So it's very big as well for them. Northern workers prefer Reform UK over Labour. These sort of urban progressives, they prefer the Greens. The Conservatives faced a revolt. I mean, after 14 years in power, people are sick of them. The Boris wave brought in a bunch of immigrants, which, let's be honest here, a lot of the Brexit campaign was we will reduce immigration. So to sort of campaign for Brexit and then introduce a bunch of immigrants, probably not exactly what the pro-Brexit, socially conservative, skeptical of multiculturalism working class were exactly wanting. So the Conservatives have faced a revolt. Most of their support has gone to Reform. They are now a party of kind of centrist people. My friend actually, whose favourite prime minister is Tony Blair. That's how centrist he is. Um, he joined the Conservatives recently because he said they're the closest thing to New Labour in that they are kind of a centrist force. Which I have to agree, they are pretty centrist now because a lot of their right has left for Reform. But yeah, I mean, they're looking centrist. And while my friend sees that as a positive, in modern politics, that can often appear a bit more as a disadvantage. The Conservatives are polling below Reform. Reform are now the top polling right wing force in British politics. It's got to be like the past 300 polls in a row or something. It's crazy. So, what's new? What's next? I don't know. All I do definitely know is that for now, unless something crazy happens, the two-party system is pretty much over, and I think everyone knows it. People are far more willing now to break with the two-party coalitions to what are more ideologically pure parties, and in a way, we're acting a lot more like a country like Germany, where instead of keeping in a big tent, these ideologies are deciding, screw this, we don't need Labour and the Tories, we'll just make our own party and our own party will be the driving force for our ideology. Um, and so this is kind of the new reality we're living in post Brexit, and it's really interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see the next elections in such a in the way voters are acting with this kind of thing. Have I lost my I've lost my base. So it's probably there. Um, so let's retract. Going back to the rule, do Virgil's law. Or Duverger's rule. I think I said Duverger's law. Isn't it a rule? First past the post produces two parties. Well, yes. It is a quote unquote rule. Um, because usually people are willing to join a big tent, look past ideological differences to in order to win. In order to win. But Brexit broke that. Brexit really broke that. It forced people to confront divisions within their own party because you couldn't stay silent. I think this is the major thing about Brexit and why it became such a sort of um, cleavage in these parties is because you couldn't look past it. It was such a big issue, and everyone had to take a side on it. Um, and so it was something you couldn't ignore, and it showed a lot of people who are within these parties. Wow, my fellow party member is like fundamentally different to me on core ideology. I'm gonna go off and make my own party because like, why am I in a party with this guy who I fundamentally disagree with? Um, and that has caused kind of the end of the two-party system. So will it re-emerge? I think probably. I would say unless our electoral system changes, which by the way, I might make a video on this in the future. I'm not in favor of. I know it's unpopular, especially for my age. I'm a Zoomer. Um, but I might make a video on it. It's a complex reason why I support first past the post, but ignoring me, Burnham actually seems to support court representation. We'll see if that comes into effect with him being prime minister. That would be interesting. I personally hope it doesn't. I'm not a fan of court representation, but it could. Who knows? And if it does, then maybe we'll complete the transition into a multi-party democracy. But I think otherwise it will eventually re-emerge. Maybe the Conservatives will become usurped by Reform in a sort of similar way to how Labour usurped the Liberals. Oh Jesus! Oh, thanks, dog. Um, in a sort of like mirror image to how the Liberals replaced Labour, but on the right instead of the left. God, my hunger is low. Um, but who knows? Who knows? So who knows? But I think, yeah. Otherwise, I think it will re-emerge because it is a rule. But for now, probably for the next election, which is in unless Burnham calls an early one, it'll be in 2029. We will be having a multi-party voter base within a two-party way of doing elections, in a first past the post way of doing elections. So whatever will emerge from that, it'll be very interesting. Anyway, I've rambled enough. This current, I will have to chop this down. There's a lot of ums in my speech, but on my actual recording software, this is like approaching half an hour. So I've been sat for like around half an hour ranting. I will let you guys go. I hope you enjoyed the video. Try to have a little bit of an unbiased look at Brexit. I would actually be interested to see if you guys can guess if I'm pro or anti Brexit from this. I don't think you will, because I think it's a pretty neutral video, honestly, on if it was good or not. I've sort of just described the changes. I'll probably reveal if I'm pro or anti-Brexit in a future video, but right now I want you to guess. So try and have a guess to see if you can determine it, and if you do guess in the comments, tell me why you think that. But apart from that, nothing else I really have to say. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Make sure to like and subscribe. I didn't say that in my last video. rookie error from a beginner YouTuber. This is only my second video, so if you like this video, you can go watch my first one, which is a bit more historical. It's about Edward VIII, but maybe you'll enjoy it, and maybe you'll enjoy more videos if you subscribe, and also please like the video. Um, I would greatly appreciate it, and it will help with the algorithm, especially if you've seen this new UK stuff about like promoting establishment YouTube channels. It would really help me as a independent creator from Great Britain if you could like and subscribe to boost me. But that will be all for today. I really need to go. I've been here for too long lecturing you on Brexit. So I will see you next time, next video. See you later. Goodbye.